It's the price of admission for this podcast is you have to deal with our adorableness.
Yeah. All right, so I'm starting this one.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
Look good, feel good, look good, feel good.
Hey brats, I'm Ben and I'm trans.
I'm Robin and I'm trans.
And today we're going to be talking about trans trending.
We're trending. Now trending, Ben and Robin.
Well, BRAT is trending.
BRAT is trending.
And
yes.
we came up with the name before that came out, but we didn't release till after. But
exactly.
We are trending. But we support anyone who's BRAT. If you feel BRAT, you're BRAT.
Yes. Exactly.
And there are definitely scientific papers on the topic of trans trending, but we're going to post.
I thought you were going to say on the topic of BRAT.
Probably that too, but we're going to be talking about our feelings mostly.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, we have a moment of trans joy from one of our listeners.
All right. Let's go with our friend Sarah from the Trans Safe Pod, which we got to collaborate with them recently. It was really fun getting to actually meet them in person,
digitally.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to talk to each other at the same time with our voices instead of just with a keyboard.
It is exciting. This one I'm going to preface with this is a funny kind of gender affirmation for a lot of us trans women, because it's a little misogynistic too, but also endearing and affirming. But our friend Sarah says, one of my favorite euphorias is when older men call me things like sweetheart and dear. I was on a work trip a few weeks ago, and this big Italian guy working the counter at the cafe I was at for dinner, he was super duper nice to me. And after I paid, he handed me my drink and said, "Here you go, sweetheart," with the biggest smile. And she says, I still get happy feelings from that interaction.
Which, it's okay. It's okay if you feel good from something that is rooted in something problematic, because someone deserves to feel good from stuff like that. And it's not me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It depends on yeah, exactly. It depends on who's on the receiving end of it, but it can be really nice if you're actually the intended audience.
I don't know. For me, if it's an older grandma calling me honey or something like that, then I'm fine with it. But if it's coming from a dude, it feels creepy for me. But if you like it, I think that's great. And I'm very happy for you.
Yeah. And we love to see you happy.
Yeah.
Love you, Sarah.
Love you, Sarah, you silly goose.
Yes.
All right. So trans trending.
For our trending topic of the week.
So there's this paper. We did not exactly prep for this because this is not an educational podcast, data-wise. It's just talking about how we feel about topical things. We can link to the paper it comes from, but I don't care enough about this person to remember her name. But just for context, there was this paper where this scientist asked a bunch of parents of trans kids about what they observed.
I know what you're talking about immediately.
In their kids, and it led to the coining of a term called rapid onset gender dysphoria, which there's so many things wrong with this paper coming from a background where I had to look at scientific papers. If you want data on trans people, you need to be asking the trans people and not their parents. I don't know.
Especially if they're not supportive of their children.
Yeah.
Which none of these parents were.
If you're listening to this, you've probably been a teenager. Maybe you are a teenager. If so, I'm sorry if we've traumatized you by talking about adult things. Hope you're doing great. But when I was a teenager, I did not tell my parents everything I was feeling. So of course, coming from a parent's perspective, it's going to look like it was suddenly onset, but you don't know what's inside your kid's brain. So the paper's messed up, but this has led to a lot of people talking about how this is just a trend. That being trans is a trend, especially for younger trans masculine people, that it's just a trend. Which, yes, is it being noticed more? Sure. But that's also because until recent history, trans masks were invisible in culture.
Yeah.
And so a lot of
Fully.
people didn't even realize that you could be anything but a trans woman and be trans.
And it's literally 50-50.
It is. In the actual data, it's 50-50. But like, because it's new.
Because we can see you now.
Yeah. New in air quotes if you're a listener, not a watcher. Because this trans mask phenomenon is new, people are deciding that it's a contagion. And just based on my personal experience, trans people just find each other. And so, yes, you might see like a higher incidence of trans people in the same social groups, but that's because we can tell who's safe, and chances are the people we're going to feel safest with are going to be other trans people, whether they're out or not.
It's only a trend in a good sense, in that the trend is that there are more safe people to talk to now, which starts a lot from just the visibility of those other kids who were willing to put themselves out there and be like, this is who I am. I'm trans mask or non-binary or like a trans boy or whatever.
And trans girls too. It's just that's not what the paper focuses on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Specifically in this case. Other just queer people in general, but other like trans people are going to gravitate towards those people because they feel safe around them. They have like a safe support network there.
Yeah. And like, at least in my case, I didn't come out as trans until I was in graduate school. And I did have friends who were trans like when I was younger, but I, like, for reasons that we've gotten into in other episodes and that we'll probably get into in future episodes, like, I was not given the space in my household to envision that for me. But in the time since then, people that I didn't talk to for years had simultaneously come out as trans, and then we found each other again online through lockdown. So like, we just find each other and we come out as trans whether we're near each other or not.
Yeah, it's that trans psychic connection.
Yes. It's gregarious transness, which is now, I already warned Robin I was going to get into this because it's my background in my graduate degree was working with crabs, and the crabs that I worked with literally have a chemical cue that attracts other people from their species to settle with them, and they settle gregariously, which is similar to a school of fish where a bunch of smaller organisms are together, and it makes them look like a big organism, which keeps them safe from predators in a size sense, but also reduces the likelihood that an individual is going to get singled out by a predator. As far as the food chain goes, we have the same thing. And like,
we're very gregarious.
We are. And I don't know about you, but for me, I almost feel like when someone, I call them the yuck vibes. Like, if someone is uncomfortable with transness, you can almost like feel the yuck. And so when you don't,
if they're not even talking about it.
Yeah, you can just sense the yuck. And so like, if there's someone who doesn't seem yuck, I'm going to gravitate towards the non-yuck. And a high proportion of the non-yuck people that I knew turned out to be trans too. That doesn't mean that it was contagious.
Yeah, I've had the same thing too. I think we've talked on the podcast before about how, like, if I were to look back at my wedding pictures now from like years and years ago, it's almost like an invisible pride parade, because so many people that I knew back then have like come out since, even though we haven't, like, most of us haven't even really been in regular contact with each other. But like, one of the first people that I came out to earlier than other people because my friend came out to me first. And then I was like, well, I guess while we're here, it would feel weird to withhold from you too. But like, we had never, ever had those conversations before, especially since I came from like a religious background. And a lot of my friends from back then were church friends. And guess what? I had like a lot of queer church friends that none of us were out to each other.
Yeah.
But now we're like, oh yeah, obviously, like, that's why we were the people within those circles who are drawn to each other, because there's just that like energy of safeness, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I do, just kind of circling back to something you said, where like a lot of the kids are realizing that they can be open and trans because of other kids. It's also because of trans people in media, like giving kids the vocabulary in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Like we are at a point, which a lot of people hate, where people are just aware that being gender expansive is a possibility in a situation where that it's never been like this before. So there's always going to be a first kid in an area that comes out, and they had to know that it was a possibility in order for it to happen. So like, it's not a contagion thing, but it is a very much, oh, I know what this is. This feels right. And I learned that. And now I can be myself. And this is like what conservatives are fighting.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just like, oh, we're so pro-life until birth.
Yes.
And they don't pay attention to the real data about survival when it comes to hiding your gender.
Or they do and they don't care.
Or they do and they don't care because we aren't human.
Yeah. Which is something that I learned a lot about for an episode on like similar topics that I did for another podcast. In my research for that, it became very apparent very quickly that a lot of these people know that the propaganda that they're pushing isn't true. Like they're very aware, but they know that people aren't going to do the research and look into it. Mm-hmm. And like they, even if they do research eventually, like they still get to be the first one to like implant that thought in somebody. And so like that's going to kind of like taint your emotions, like how you think about things going forward.
Which trans trending just brings us all right back to that bite model. They want to control your behavior, the information you get, your thoughts, and your emotions. Mm-hmm. So in this case, they want you to behave according to the gender roles assigned to you. They don't want you to know what transness is, and they don't want you to know real data on how positive outcomes are pretty certain when it comes to treating gender dysphoria. Like the rates of regret for gender affirming care are lower than regret for like a knee replacement, but no one has a problem with a knee replacement. For thoughts, they don't want you to even think about transness. They don't want you to give it any space. They want you to think that it's gross to keep people pressured to be in the closet. And then for emotions, they don't want you to even think of trans people as human so that other people can sense that, and they don't want them to feel safe to come out. It's all about controlling the status quo, which is not good for a lot of people, whether they're trans or not.
Yeah. This is one of those fun thoughts that I just right now randomly thought of, like through our conversation. That's what I love about the podcast and just us hanging out in general. But anyway, like I was just thinking, there's a lot of cis people who are very threatened by the trans movement, or whatever you want to call it.
Trans agenda.
The trans agenda, which is safety and snacks and nothing else. Don't worry about us. A lot of them feel threatened by it. I think a lot of it is just that they're having to grapple with their own like internalized gender ideas that people have put on them. I think that if enough cis people in society embrace this and support us, I feel like the existence of trans people who are open and visible and supported, I feel like that's good for cis people too, because there's so many ways that the gender roles and expectations in society are like shackles to you. Like plenty of cis people have said like gender is a prison or like just gender expectations and roles. Like having enough people out and visible who are gender non-conforming in any way, like it's good for you too, even if you're a cis and straight and like not necessarily like queer in any like specific way.
You've triggered, put a pin in my new tangent based on your tangent.
No, I mean, it's like freedom for you too. you know?
Yeah. So my tangent is, I think I've said it before, but one of my hyperfixations is high control groups. And one of those groups is the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints, or Mormons. And there's this huge increase right now in Utah, especially because it's like the hub of Mormonism. This is going to be a big trigger warning required rant, but trigger warning for like crimes and violence and death.
Mm-hmm.
There's
And just a reminder, content warnings are always in the episode descriptions. Just like scroll down to the bottom.
And trigger warning, blanket trigger warning for every episode we ever do, because that's just part of our experience. But
anyway, trigger away. Yeah,
in Utah, there, especially among like Mormon families, not that Mormons love the word Mormon, but I'm going to use it because I can. There's a lot of murder suicides happening between couples. There's child abuse happening. There's like just so much violence and like general violent crimes happening among Mormon families. And I firmly believe it's because of the pressures that their church puts on them to fulfill these specific gender roles and to always look happy and perfect. And like, as soon as one thing goes wrong, it like melts down their entire system and makes them do some heinous shit. Not all Mormons, obviously, but like especially the last year, it's just been crime after crime after crime after child abuse after murder suicide, based on wanting to uphold these gender norms. And so like not only does gender affirming care save trans lives, but not being so strictly adherent to gender norms and roles saves lives, like not that trans lives aren't lives, but like general lives, all lives, any lives will be saved if we let people just do what feels right for them.
Yeah.
And take the pressure away. And if you like traditional roles, that's fine. Do it. But don't be mad at other people who don't want to do it. And if you're happy in your church, be happy in your church. But don't let your church be an excuse to hate people. That is a hot, spicy rant that's going to get me canceled. But I would love to hear from listeners about if they've noticed the same thing, circling back again because ADHD and tangents, of having their friend group being closeted and then like eventually realizing everyone was trans or queer. I want to know how prevalent that is, because
I've heard it from a lot of people.
Same.
It's very common.
Same. Like my friend Greb that I've mentioned before, their dad was military and they've lived like all over the globe. And back before social media, they would like lose touch with people. But then like people that they lived near in Japan that are also now back in the States, like, shit, we're both trans, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like not just because you're around each other, it's because you know how to find the people that will make you feel good and who will not make you withhold these archaic, unspoken and sometimes spoken rules. But gender roles are toxic.
Yeah, that was a tangent, but that was a really good tangent.
Yeah.
It's been said before, but it can never be said enough.
I mean, a lot of our podcast is just going to be the same stuff over and over again.
Don't tell them that.
But like with a different aspect, you know, like we're focusing on trans trending right now, but like at the end of the day, it's all coming from the same source. All the struggles are coming from the same thoughts, ideas, feelings.
Everything's tangled up in the same bundle of chords.
Yeah.
It's all tangled up in the same brat gang of emotion.
The brat king.
Brat gang, brat queen.
Not married, siblings who share the crown because we don't believe in birth order.
We're
bullshit.
Egalitarian.
Yeah. Then you've got your brat princess and I've got my brat prince that we are married to.
Yeah.
Not parent children, just all royal, but we're in charge of this podcast, not our lives.
I'm the captain now.
I am the captain of this ship. Also, this is definitely like, you're the queen with a capital Q and then I'm like the king with a lowercase k, because you actually understand how podcasts work. And I'm just here to be someone you talk to and cross stitch.
But you talk good.
According to you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I like our conversations too. That's why we're here.
Yeah. It's hard to do a podcast by yourself because
Yeah.
a lot of the best conversations come from having like ideas bouncing off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I found a Scientific American paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Evidence Undermines Rapid Onset Gender Dysphoria Claims by Timmy Broderick. And then the subtitle is Fears of Social Contagion Used to Support Anti-Transgender Legislation Are Not Supported by Science. So it's saying that a study claiming to describe more than 1,600 possible cases of a socially contagious syndrome, that's my air quotes voice, was retracted for failing to obtain ethics approval, that the American Psychological Association and 61 other healthcare providers organizations signed a letter in 2021 denouncing the validity of rapid onset gender dysphoria as a clinical diagnosis. A steadily growing body, this is me plagiarizing, by the way, except now I'm not because I cited it. A steadily growing body of scientific evidence demonstrates that it does not reflect transgender adolescents' experiences and that social contagion is not causing more young people to seek gender-affirming care, but it's still being used to justify anti-trans legislation across the U.S. The former president of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, Eli Coleman, says to say it's a hypothesis at this point based on the paucity of research on this, I think it's a real stretch. This person helped create the standards of care for trans people, which endorse and explain evidence for forms of gender-affirming care. And now it's just talking about how the paper came out in 2018 by Lisa Littman. She was at Brown University. There's a little asterisk there, which we'll have to scroll down in a minute to figure out what that was from. But I think because it says then at Brown University, it probably means she lost her job. She asked the parents of trans adolescents recruited predominantly from anti-trans websites and forums to describe their child's sudden or rapid onset of gender dysphoria and to state if it coincided with increased social media usage or their friends coming out as trans. She later issued a correction that updated the methodology, noted that it's not a formal diagnosis, but it had already been taken by haters, basically, to talk about how it's a trend and that being trans is a mental illness and that it has been cited for laws in Missouri, Utah, and Arkansas to justify banning or restricting gender-affirming care, which for young people is usually blockers, like puberty blockers, therapy, and social transition. Like very, very rare cases of breast removal in trans masculine people who have life-threatening side effects of gender dysphoria.
It's extremely rare.
Extremely, extremely rare.
And also, HRT is never done until, I think sometimes for minors, if they're like 16 or 17.
Yeah, the youngest I think I've personally heard is 16.
Yeah.
And that's with parental consent.
Exactly. But it's mostly going to be blockers so that it gives them time to get older and mature more and like think more about where they want to go with their lives.
Diane Arensaf, director of mental health at the UC San Francisco Child and Adolescent Gender Center, said it's not rapid onset gender dysphoria, it's rapid onset parental discovery. I'm trying to find this asterisk because this is a long article. Okay, so this sentence was edited after posting to correct Lisa Littman's occupation and her affiliation at the time. So it doesn't say if she lost her job, but I don't think she's still affiliated with the university after this. But I will say, like, puberty blockers, people are so up in arms about puberty blockers. But, like, puberty blockers, especially if you're assigned male at birth, like, testosterone will literally change your bone structure. And in order to undo the effects, like, breast removal sucks. And it's still a major surgery. But for facial feminization surgery, you literally have to get bone shaved off. You have to get, like, your face removed and stitched back on after they shave off bone. Like, tissue removal is still a major surgery, but if you don't have to have your child go through literally having bones shaved down, why would you want them to? It's just bizarre. But they're hoping it's just a phase. It's not. Should have worn my not a phase shirt. Instead I wore defend trans lives.
I have a protect trans kids t-shirt somewhere, but it doesn't fit me anymore because boobs.
Good for you.
Good for me.
Good for you. Yeah, like some people with the way that their puberty affects them, it's major, major, major changes to their bodies that require multiple surgeries. Every major surgery you have under general anesthesia comes with risks. And puberty blockers, which were created to help cis people with precocious puberty or like very, very early puberty, are safe, they're effective. They don't do any permanent changes to their body. All they're doing is preventing permanent changes to your body until you have time and the ability to consent to the things that will give you the permanent changes that best align with your identity, which people listening to this already know that. But just in case this is a person who doesn't understand or wants to understand about supporting their kid. I'm not a doctor, but I've read a lot of things doctors have written, and that's what the doctors are saying.
Yeah, and I want to maybe even do an episode about this in the future, but the origins of this are like from a detransitioner who has, I think, a really interesting backstory of kind of almost being like radicalized. But like essentially, this person was, I believe they were self identified as like a trans man, but they were assigned female at birth and met some people that basically convinced them that from a feminist perspective or whatever, that like transitioning to be male or masculine was like
Betrayal.
yeah, like anti-feminist or whatever. So anyway, that's essentially their like deconversion story or whatever in like a very small nutshell. But they ended up becoming like essentially anti-trans activists or pro-detransitioning activists at least, and like started a blog which was talking about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then just like a lot of anti-trans cis people especially ended up like latching onto these ideas and using them as the source for a lot of the like anti-trans information that's floating around now and being used as like propaganda against us all the time. Like a lot of it just comes from the same source, which it all like leads back to this one person's blog.
So it looks like, and I'm not trying to say that detransitioning is not valid because like there's so many reasons why people might detransition.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that is wrapped up in safety. And
Very
I'm not
often.
trying to say like no one should ever detransition, but according to Wikipedia, the People's Encyclopedia, the prevalence of detransition is anywhere from 1 to 8%. I don't understand why you would want to punish 92 to 99% of people because 1 to 8% of people might regret a transition.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it really depends on what you're calling detransition because, like, there are people out there who are still trans, but just no longer use hormones for whatever reason, but they're still living their lives as their, like, affirmed trans identity. But medically, that can be considered detransition, but that doesn't mean they're no longer trans. It just means they're no longer medically, like, actively pursuing treatment.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's like they would still internally identify it as trans, but they basically end up going back in the closet because life has become incredibly difficult for them because of the society around them, because of their like complete lack of ability to get or hold a job just for being trans, which there are currently no legal protections for in the United States, contrary to popular belief.
Also, for the record, the rate of regret for knee replacement surgery is estimated from 6 to 30%.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't get fought as much on knee replacement.
Mm-hmm.
There was something I wanted to circle back to. Oh, I know what it was. So, okay, call it anti-feminist to be trans mask.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm wrong, but isn't feminism just believing that anyone should be able to do what they want, no matter who you are? Like, let women do what they want in addition to men already doing what they want. So, like, it shouldn't matter where you started or where you're going. I feel like feminism is just let anyone do what they want, including women. And if you're not a woman, that doesn't mean you can't be feminist as long as you're like, hey, women, do what you want, get paid equally, get access to things equally,
Mm-hmm.
and do what you want. If you want kids, have kids. If you don't want kids, don't have kids. You shouldn't be pressured to have kids you don't want. You shouldn't be pressured not to have kids if you do want. If you want to stay home, stay home. If you want to work, work. If you want to transition, transition. Like, I thought that's what feminism was, but maybe I'm just silly.
A lot of the oldest like anti-trans arguments come from, I think, second wave feminism or third wave. I forget, I mixed them up.
There are so many waves.
Yeah. but a lot of it is under the guise of feminism and protecting women and stuff like that.
I just don't see why we can't protect women while also protecting trans people, whether they're a woman or not, and protecting any marginalized community, protecting indigenous people, protecting why people being safe isn't pie.
Yeah. Pie.
I love pie.
Some pie. Some safety pie.
You can pie if you want to. You can leave your friends some pie.
But your friends eat cobbler, and if they eat cobbler, then there are no friends of mine.
No cobbler, but I do like a crumble.
Yeah, like a crumble.
Everybody's good at cooking something, and I'm good at cooking crumble. British Got Talent. Or Britain's Got Talent, I mean. British in it. I don't know where we're going, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have no idea. We lost whatever thread that we had to begin with. And that's okay. That's part of the journey.
Yeah, I think if people transition and they realize it's not right for them and they want to detransition, that's cool. Just don't tell other people that they can't stay transitioned just because you didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. Your experience isn't everybody's experience.
Your experience is valid, but it doesn't invalidate mine.
Mm-hmm.
Mic drop. Throw it across the room.
I wish my mic would drop. It keeps like floating up for some reason.
That isn't the new one, is it?
No, this is the old one.
I was supposed to bring a mic stand with me today, but I forgot. And so we had to go buy this one today.
Well, on the plus side, Ben is the proud new owner of his own mic stand. So,
which I will use.
Yeah, all the time for interviews.
Yeah, because especially if when we record, this is behind the scenes. When we record, it's usually like on a weekday morning, and then I have to work in the afternoons. But if we are recording with someone in a different time zone that our morning is like their practically nighttime, we'll just record remotely. And I have the original mic stand in my craft room.
Yeah.
Which probably by now you've seen my yarn.
The original BRAT mic.
The original BRAT mic, which I will remember this weekend.
The OG BRAT.
OG BRAT.
Should we wrap this one then?
Yeah. If being trans is a trend, it's not because it's contagious. It's because people are learning, and learning is good. Knowledge is power. And people who don't want you to have knowledge don't want you to have power.
And if it's a trend, it's one of the coolest trends ever.
Filled with really cool, cute people with impeccable taste, fashion, style, music, creativity, brilliance, talents. Trans people are so magnificent. And queer people in general.
Yeah. To quote our friend Ari from a previous episode, that's good fucking company.
Yes. If you are listening and you are queer, you are good fucking company.
Yeah, we love you.
And if you're cis and you're an ally, you're probably good company too. But you're not my special favorite. Trans people are my special favorite. Get over it.
Yeah, he does give favoritism.
I do.
That's okay.
All right. Well, I've been Ben. I've been trans, and I have been trending.
Yes. I have been Robin, I have been trans, and I have been trending. And so has Brad. Hashtag Brat.
Hashtag Brat.
BratPod is Brat. Bye. The struggles of a dingleberry boy.
He's a dingle booty boy.
Dingle booty boys.
I figured out why a cat was making noises in my house, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I never got closure on that.
We didn't, whoever went in the pantry last, you have to pull the pantry closed really well for it to latch, and it wasn't latched. So someone got in the pantry and was trying to get to like hot dog buns that are stale. But it was definitely rogue, which is so not rogue behavior. Stormy was sitting on my chest.
We have a cabinet with cat toys in it that we keep closed up because we don't want Nami getting into them and eating things. Last night we heard noises downstairs and it was Nami.
What's these women?
We forgot to put the women. We forgot to put the little thing back that secures the door, and she was like right in there trying to pull shit out of it.
She got a nom nom nom.
You got a nom nom nom.
Nami nom 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 nom.
You did a nom nom nom. Yeah, nom nom nom.